Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Sterling Heights City Council to order. Please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear God, please bless our elected officials. Grant them courage and wisdom to do what is right for all citizens. Amen.
Amen.
All right, thank you, Ms. Riska. Can we please have the roll call?
Mayor Taylor?
Here.
Here.
Oski?
Present.
Mr. Radke?
Present.
Schmidt?
Present.
Brianna?
Here.
Present.
Council, we need approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Konski.
move to approve the agenda.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? No discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. First item on our agenda tonight is a report from our city manager, Mark Vanderpool. Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I only have one item on my report this evening, and that is to introduce Melanie Davis, our Community Relations Director, and she's going to be introducing a couple of board members. We're continuing showcasing all of our board and commissions and the good work they're doing, and tonight we're going to be showcasing the Community Alliance group, so we're pleased to do that, and so I'd like to introduce Melanie Davis.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor Taylor, members of council, Mr. Vanderpool, Mr. Kajewski. I have had such a great time working with our Community Alliance over the past year and a half. They have been doing an incredible amount of work in the past couple of years, and it's exciting to see all of the things that they're working on to make sure that every one of our residents here in the city of Sterling Heights feels welcome and accepted and safe. So Stacy Bari is our chair. She was not able to make it this evening. She had a prior commitment, but I would like to introduce to the podium to tell you all a little bit more about all the great things that this commission has been working on. Our vice chair, Ricardo Harris, and our member at large, Cindy Bjornson. And we also have member Tatrika Graffenried in the audience as well to support. But if Ricardo and Cindy can come up to the podium, we'll get the presentation started.
Good evening, Council. Thanks for having us tonight. As Melanie just spoke, we're here to present you a little update from our strategic plan that we presented earlier this year, just to kind of give you a back brief of what we've been doing. So you can go to the next slide. As Melanie just mentioned, there's been a couple shifts in our team since the last time we presented. Now Stacy Bari is our chair. I've been kind of promoted to vice chair. And then we still have Nakia Powell-Thomas. Tim Doppel is our secretary now. Rich Ruba is still with us. And then we have our new members, Tatrika Graffenried, who is here, and then also Cynthia Bjornson. As you know, she's come here and presented in June. She has been phenomenal. I just want to say that. She's been phenomenal, kind of been like the wind behind our sails, and she's going to be presenting a little bit more and giving you a little bit more about that. So our vision is we will build a culture within Sterling Heights that intentionally honors and celebrates all people, and then our mission is to create an inclusive environment that is intentional about celebrating acceptance of all people through education, exposure, and events to make Sterling Heights a destination for all. And so just a quick recap, and then I'm going to turn it over to Cynthia, is that our three pillars, if you will, that we really wanted to go after was education, inclusion, and leadership. So follow me. Cynthia's going to come up here and give you a back brief, and then I'll be back up on the last point.
Thank you. Good evening. Our first strategy was education. I'm going to highlight a few things that we've been involved in. So our strategic plans includes our involvement in unity workshops, such as the Macomb Diversity Summit. And right now, we are currently collecting more information about the Diversity Summit, and with the hopes of the possibility of Community Alliance hosting a presentation during that summit. As far as the social media calendar, Tim Doppel, one of our members, is in charge of our social media calendar and posts. He does an excellent job informing the community about Community Alliance's efforts. He was responsible for the social media post introducing Community Alliance and its members. He also drafts posts recognizing important DEI dates and months, most recently in Indigenous Peoples' Day. Resolutions, Community Alliance brought 16 resolutions to City Council this year so far. These resolutions were passed, of course, and they included Black History Month in February, National Women's History Month, Black Balloon Day, Bangladesh National Flag Day in March, Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day in April, LGBTQ plus Pride Month, Immigrant Heritage Month at Juneteenth, Men's Health Month in June, Park and Recreation Month in July, Hispanic Heritage Month and National Welcoming Week in September, Global Diversity Awareness Month, LGBTQ plus History Month, National Disability Employment Awareness Month, Filipino American History Month in October. We were also involved in the Pride flag raising ceremony and are looking forward to assisting with an upcoming Pride Night at the ice rink and potentially working with Macomb Pride for next year's Pride picnic. Okay, as far as the number 4, the live panel discussions, one of the most exciting things I think we're working on right now is assisting the Sterling Heights, or working with the Sterling Heights Public Library as they bring the human library to our community in April. The human library is a library of people where readers can borrow human beings as open books and have conversations they would not normally have access to. The tagline of the human library is "Unjudge Someone." Can we flip? Strategy number 2 is inclusion. Another exciting program that we're bringing to Sterling Heights is Disability Awareness Workshop, or DAW. The DAW kits, they're kits that have 10 hands-on activity stations. These stations include learning differences 1 and 2, autism spectrum disorders, vision impairment, learning about Braille, gross motor impairment, fine motor impairment, adaptive equipment and a wheelchair course, speech impairment, and deaf and hard of hearing. So we are planning on renting these kits that come from Rochester, and we're hoping to have a couple of those stations at the Cultural Exchange, and then having a full-blown workshop with all 10 stations somewhere late February, early March. This program was developed to teach the community how people who have a disability are affected on a daily basis by their challenges and differences. So we're very excited to, especially those last 2 programs, to bring to Sterling Heights. So thank you.
All right, and so our last focus that we really wanted to accomplish, and I think I briefed this one the last time I was up in front of you all, it was to really focus on the leadership, give a tool to some of the event planning and things to really, address those blind spots that we all have when we talk about DE&I. So we developed a checklist, and this checklist, it includes factors that, you might not think about all the time, like age, physical abilities, and economic impacts, whether the event's affordable or not, religion, et cetera. So this checklist kind of goes through and identifies things that, again, we might not always think about. It's like to have, and we understand that all events won't cater to everyone, but it's one of those things that we would like to see if we can check those boxes. Do we have vendors that are in Sterling Heights that we should be looking towards before we go outside the city? All kinds of different opportunities there. And so we met actually with the facilities manager, Jared Bowden, and Kyle Langlos, which is the Parks and Rec director, a couple weeks ago. And just kind of floated the idea with this checklist to see if we could get any feedback, and they liked the checklist, but then it stemmed more conversation as we started talking. And one of the things that I'm sure a lot of different departments struggle with is funding, and earmarking that money and making sure that funding is available. So when we start talking about DEI and the needs of parks and the needs of scholarship funds and the needs of some of the other various departments, we're talking and thinking about putting together a budget for the Community Alliance to, so to speak, have like some funding that if Kyle needs money for bleachers at a park, Donovan Park, I believe, is one of the parks that he said needs bleachers, or scholarship money for hearing impaired or someone that needs sign language, for instance. We can't have sign language at all the events, but if we had money set aside for specific D&I projects, and depending on the department, they submit an application maybe to the Community Alliance. We would vet that, make sure that it aligns with the vision that we have, with the vision that the city has, and then approve those funds. So that's something I just wanted to throw out there as something we're thinking about. If you have any questions for us, we're here available to answer any questions that you might have. But that concludes the brief.
And Mayor, it's so gratifying to see the good work going on with the Community Alliance. It's very meaningful work. And as we talked about Thursday night at our volunteer appreciation dinner, the city would not be in the position it's in today with the great reputation it enjoys, not only throughout Michigan, but really across the country as being just an incredibly successful community. It's not only because we have wonderful employees, and we have about 650 in total, but it's also because we have amazing volunteers. We have hundreds of volunteers that are appointed by the mayor and the city council that run all of our boards and commissions like the Community Alliance. And the city council asked during strategic planning last year that we showcase all the good work these commissions are doing throughout the year, and that's what we've been doing. We still have a few more to finish up, and we'll probably start the rotation again, because you can see once many of these projects are completed, the boards and commissions are starting new work. So we want to make sure that the community is aware of all this. And I just wanted to thank Ricardo and Cynthia for presenting this evening. I want to thank the entire Alliance for helping us, including Melanie and her team. That I know that you work very closely with our Community Relations Department, and we appreciate their good work too, helping you. Thank you. And Mayor, that concludes my report this evening.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vanderpool. Before we move on, I will open it up to council if there are any comments or questions for the Community Alliance with them here. If not, I want to thank you both for the work that you're doing. It is very important to us, and it is helpful to inform us. You know, one of the terms we used when we formed this alliance was blind spots, and that's what we heard today too. Where do we need help? Some areas we don't even know where we need help, and that's where you guys step in. So keep up the good work. We appreciate you being here tonight and what you're doing to make the city of Sterling Heights better for everyone who lives here. So thank you both very much. With that, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the consent agenda. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on any item on tonight's consent agenda? Mr. Nelson.
Ken Nelson, Firesteel Drive, Sterling Heights. I've got two items on the consent agenda. First one is item E. The city is spending $640,000, and I know Mr. Vanderpool will jump right on this one and tell me there's all kinds of information out on this, but it's $640,000. The city is buying property again. This is the second property for the Corridor Improvement Authority, and it is funded strictly, I'm told, by the American Rescue Plan Act. So $640,000, we're purchasing the old amusement park, I see. Most of it is wetlands. Part of it, the city wants to be able to have control of what goes in there. And it's all part of their North Van Dyke corridor improvement. I just wanted people to be aware of where that money is, and I'm totally considering filing a FOIA to get an up-to-date spending on that ARPA money, 19.8, and possibly going back into the $4 million that we received prior to that. The last item is item
Jay.
Oh, Jay, thank you. It's on the property, the Starrett Inn. Is this thing on today? I brought that up because there was a lot of discussion on on social media about people thinking that tonight they were going to be discussing this and going over. This, again, is another 10-acre. It's not going to be coming up for discussion until November 15th. And if it's anything like the 10th, October 10th, last Monday night, get ready for a ride. That was defeated by your planning commission on a 5-3 vote. And now it's coming in front of the council, who has complete control of the whole item. They can do whatever they want. So I'm just making sure that people realize that this will come up before the city council on the 15th of November. Thanks for the time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nelson. Anyone else on the consent agenda? Mr. Smith?
Tonight's consent agenda is an insult and an abuse to the whole concept of a consent agenda. Rather than rubber stamping routine business, it is jam-packed with controversial items that demand citizen discussion. Since December of 2021, we, the people of Sterling Heights, have overwhelmingly opposed the high-density housing project, which is quite rightly labeled the wedge. It drives a wedge between the established builders of our suburban community and the outside developer who seeks to get the money and run. It also wedges 3 drive-throughs, 6 doomed storefronts, and 172 tiny cell-size housing units into a 10-acre forest that could not even support a quarter of that density on a sustainable and entire environmentally friendly basis. This project opens with a package of 3 rezonings that devalue and degrade the lifestyle of the homeowners who build our city from day one. Then it follows up by begging for 21 major variances that effectively set aside every standard of civilized development. We would be interested to see if the outside developer can even state one code, standard, or ordinance that he is not seeking to violate. So many violations, so little time. 172 cell-size homes in 5 acres. That's 35 families per acre. That's a long way from the mayor's 1 family per acre. It adds 9 more business failure opportunities to Hall Road, the graveyard of failed franchises. Is this developer smarter than the owners of Lakeside? 0 setback from Hall Road with 60-mile-per-hour traffic and snow to plow. Who will be held responsible for the damage done by a car that gets a little off the highway? Is it fair to the developers who bought the land and complied with the city's mountain of regulations? Their cost of compliance will be on their books forever. This will stick out like Pinocchio's nose and obstruct the view of legitimate business. This devastating overdevelopment is clearly designed to degrade, downgrade, destroy, and devastate the demographic bedrock of our suburban community. It is hard not to see the sinister intent of this campaign. Why is this being forced upon us? Is the mayor craving to outpopulate Warren and make himself the 3rd biggest mayor in Michigan? Is the bronze medal that valuable? it is hard not to suspect that some form of compensation is involved. Sure, nobody will witness a bag of cash changing hands, but cause and effect is hard to ignore. The developer speculates about renting to upscale professional millennials. But such speculation is itself a violation of open housing. The actual tenants will be anybody with the rent money. Crowding causes conflict, confusion, confrontation, chaos, and eventually killing. Our ongoing expansion of the police will do nothing to prevent in-house killing, but now we'll have more officers on staff to write up and file the reports. Ho-hum, you can't do nothing about in-house killing, except maybe not build 600 square foot cells. You of council will be personally responsible for the in-house and traffic casualties that are certain to follow if the wedge is greased through.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Anyone else under the consent agenda? Mrs. Smith?
Moira Smith, a longtime resident of Sterling Heights. Well, the faces are pretty grim up there because I do think you guys are really overstepping now. It's not only the prior agenda item that Mr. Smith just commented about, and probably Mr. Nelson. I missed most of it. However, there are big concerns about item E. $640,000 on the consent agenda without discussion. That really deserves some discussion. I thought the consent agenda was more for postage expenses and things like that, maybe some paper clips. But it leads to a lot of big questions. You're trying to hide something and pull a fast one on both of these agenda items. $640,000. Well, we got a drain issue there, and apparently that's why you want to purchase this property. I didn't know the city was going to be going into real estate adventures. I really don't think that's appropriate. It's to help out the Chaldean Community Foundation apartments, and it's going to go, it's because of the drain issue there. It's a large floodplain. It's my understanding that this big project has been put on hold because of the probably DEQ and other items because it's in the floodplain. I wondered if Mr. Wagner, the attorney for the Riverland Apartments, has been contacted about this. They have a lot of flooding over there. I see it because I live in this area. It could affect us people that live on the river, further downstream, not just at Van Dyke and Riverland Drive. I think you guys have better think about that. All the shifting and changing of the river, I see it because I live on the river, and that has been caused by the cleanup for the canoeing company. This is going to have an effect on us. If you guys are building a have a big project, and now you need the drainage to be appropriately dealt with, and what cost is that going to be to us, the taxpayers, to further subsidize this project? Because I remember when it was approved to begin with, you gave the developer and the owner of this property to have the Chaldean Foundation program. They were given very big concessions by the city. Who ends up paying for the taxes that that property is not going to be paying? Because you guys gave a deal to them. They're only going to pay a fee for police department. They are not paying property taxes. So there's another handout to them. You're buying this property so you can cut a deal for a special group of people with their special project, not considering the people of Sterling Heights. A lot of people do not like this Chaldean Foundation apartment complex going in, and it's going to destroy the character of the north end. The traffic can't handle it. Obviously, we're going to have more sewer problems in Sterling Heights drain water, runoff water, but still, it's going to cause problems on the river and cause problems on people's property. So I think I've said enough, but thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Smith. Anyone else on the consent agenda? If not, I'll close that portion. Council, we need a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Kosky.
move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
It's been moved and supported with no discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up is a consideration item. This is to consider appointments to the City of Sterling Heights Beautification Commission. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? If not, council, we have one vacancy on the Beautification Commission. This is a partial term ending June 30th, 2023. City council appointment. Is there anyone who'd like to make the appointment?
Mayor Taylor.
Who wants it? I think I heard Mrs. Zarko.
Okay. Resolved to appoint Cheryl Burns to the Beautification Commission to a term ending June 30th, 2023, subject to the appointee meeting the qualifications set forth in Charter 4.03 and taking the oath of office within 2 weeks. Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? No discussion, all in?
Wait,
Yeah, okay.
I do
okay.
have something to say. Ms. Burns actually lives in my neighborhood, and I will tell you that daily she walks her dog and carries a very large garbage bag with pickers to pick up trash along Moravian and inside Family Park and the whole neighborhood. I think she's going to be a fantastic addition to this board and many other boards probably, but I welcome her with open arms.
Very good. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, just briefly.
Mr. Radke.
Looking at the back of our packet, it said that she's a master gardener, so I look forward to adding her to the committee.
Excellent. Anyone else? No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That concludes that portion of our agenda for tonight. We'll move on to communications from citizens. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on any item not on tonight's agenda? Okay, I'll close that portion. We'll go on to reports from city administration. Mr. Vanderpool.
Mayor, just briefly, I wanted to comment on the Riverland property that the city's acquiring under consent. In the past, a lot of property acquisition has been included on consent. There isn't a dollar threshold for consent. It's simply dictated by rules and procedures of city council, and all the same backup that would be included on a regular agenda items included on consent. So anyone can look at the consent agenda and look at the entire backup. But what I wanted to say is the North Van Dyke District, as many know, we've spent probably 3-4 years now developing the master plan for that redevelopment of that district. And I think almost everyone would agree the area is looking tired. And without some attention, while it's not blighted now, it certainly could be headed in that direction without some good planning and changing the course of that area for a more prosperous future. So there's a lot of projects going on in that area that is doing just that. That Chaldean Community Foundation project is going to be transformative. There's no question about it. It's going to inject hundreds of people into the district. The businesses along that corridor are excited about it. These are individuals that are going to shop in the area. They're going to go to restaurants in the area. They're going to go to other establishments, retail establishments. They're going to have their cars worked on from some of the auto places out there and so on. That's called the economic impact. So anyone who's interested in our North Van Dyke redevelopment plan can go to our website. There's a lot of material on it, including the entire master plan. And we're happy to discuss and meet with residents who'd like to learn more about it and talk about some of the ideas that we've spent a few years now going through in public forums and a lot of significant community engagement. So thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vanderpool. Mr. Koszewski, anything tonight?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Council, any new business or reports?
Mayor Taylor.
Mrs. Arco.
You know me well enough to know that I usually don't respond to some of the negative things that we hear up here, but, it surprises me that we could work here together in a positive way to bring back, to bring items to the city or to bring discussion and good things to the city, the cleanup of the Clinton River, or even buying the property on Van Dyke. If we don't own it, we can't control it. If we don't own it, somebody else controls it. So, these are good things, but then there's always somebody that wants to cast something negative to it, or imply that there's something that's not proper. And you know what? It gets tiring after a while. It really gets tiring to have people instill fear in others. And it's really unnecessary. So that's all I have to say tonight.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Zarko. Anyone else? Mr. Radke?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Briefly, I was going to respond to Mr. Smith, but he did another drive-by. He walked in, gave his little speech for the cameras because he's running for office, and he ran back out the door. But I had some problems with what he said, starting with, it's my understanding we're spending this ARPA money on the land on North Van Dyke because we're going to make a public park as part of our master plan. And the idea that this is done in the dark is hilarious because we've had 5 meetings about it, at least 5, 6 meetings about it, where all public meetings, all played on the YouTube channel, all seen by the viewers at home, discussing this project. So I don't understand why this is a surprise to anyone. We all voted to make a public park there as part of the future of North Van Dyke. Now, the character of the North End always fascinates me. Right now, North Van Dyke is auto body shops, there's some pot shops in Utica, there is a bunch of empty vacant land, there's a bunch of shopping centers that really aren't going anywhere or doing anything. What is the character of the North End? The reason that we have the master plan is to breathe life back into what should be the crown jewel of our city, but has fallen on a little bit of rougher times. That's the point of the master plan. That's why we're doing this. And then to talk about demographic changes, it's racist. That's all it is. I mean, I'll just put the finger on the head. It's racist. His whole statement was racist. And then he comes here and he always accuses us of bribery. You know, maybe that's how he's going to win votes in the next election. He's been rejected so many times, though. I'm shocked. I just find it tiring. You know, if he had some proof, bring it forward. But he's a coward. That's why he ran out the door, because he knew we'd respond to him. And I'm sick and tired of him coming in here because he was rejected by the voters and trying to instill his will on us. So I'm sick and tired of that. I think that this park is going to be a jewel on the river to start the future of Sterling Heights, and I'm proud to have voted for it tonight. All that being said, I wanted to also talk about beehives, to change subjects. You know, it's come to my attention that there are some beehives in the city, and right now our ordinance bans them. It says that they have to be on, 6 acres of land as part of a commercial farm. So I was hoping without objection, we could ask the city to amend that to maybe 1 hive per house or something like that. Because I don't have a problem with our neighbors keeping bees. I'm a gardener myself. I think they're good. And I'd hate to have to force some of the people who already have them in the city to get rid of them because currently our rules don't allow them. So I'd ask for, without objection, to have some kind of.
Well, how about this? I mean, you asked pretty specifically. I don't think we need to study this for months on end. But can we ask for, maybe a month from now, bring an ordinance or whatever change needs to be made in order to consider
2 hives?
relaxing the restrictions on beehives, on beekeeping? Mr. Krzyzewski, Mr. Vanderpool, any thoughts on that?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Radke, we're happy to research whatever the city council would like. If you'd like us to explore, report back to you on what some of the best practices might be in this area, we're happy to do that. I think arbitrarily establishing a count, just here this evening might not be the most prudent course, but we're happy to provide you good information so you can make a good decision on this if it's a pleasure of council.
Okay. How much time do you need?
Probably a little more than 30 days. I think 60 days might be a little more reasonable. But again, we'll do what the council directs us to do.
Okay. Like second meeting in December, is that good?
It's fine by me.
Okay. Any objection to a report? Okay. You have direction. Anything else, Mr. Radke?
I just hope everyone has a great trip to Muskegon to go to the MML. I'm looking forward to learning more about the pattern book home project that Councilwoman Zarko has talked about in the past. I think it could be a real benefit to some of the lots on major roadways, other places, to help us get a little bit more density, the missing middle. The idea that not everything has to be a single-family home, not everything needs to be an apartment building, but something in between that will help benefit the residents, especially those who are having trouble finding housing right now. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Radke. Anyone else? Mrs. Sarowski?
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. So just very briefly, I do want to wish my colleagues well at the Michigan Municipal League Conference. I am not going to be going. I'll be holding down the fort. So I'll be not really officially in charge, but I'll be here. So if anyone does have any concerns or questions, especially about some of the things that we discussed tonight and some of the projects, I do welcome any comments or calls. So thank you. And I am welcoming those and asking for any feedback on those. And then I just wish everybody a safe trip out to Muskegon, but also just briefly about the beekeeping. We do keep bees on our property where I work up in Clarkston, and we have some fresh honey from them, just from 2 small hives, so they are a great benefit to the community, and I'm all for that. So good, thank you, Mr. Radke, for bringing that up. I think that's a wonderful idea. And other than that, I wish everybody a good week, and we'll see you guys in the next couple of weeks, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Sarowski. Anyone else? If not, I think I've been better about not responding to Mr. Smith in the past, but I do want to just point a couple things out. The consent agenda, there's Mr. Smith and some others, but mostly Mr. and Mrs. Smith, hammer away at the consent agenda as if that's only, for things such as buying paper clips. Well, we don't vote on buying paper clips up here. We let the administration just buy paper clips on their own, okay? The consent agenda, we could vote, we could individually discuss every single one of these items and drag this meeting out for hours on end, but the reason they're on the consent agenda is because they're routine matters. They're things that have been budgeted already, things that just occur in the normal course of business for a city, things that we know we need. We've already discussed them probably at 2 budget hearings before. And then if any council member sees anything on this consent agenda, or frankly, if any member of the public sees something on the consent agenda and gives us a heads up, we're able to remove it off the consent agenda and give it further discussion. It's something we do quite regularly. So sometimes we do things that are quite routine and they're very expensive. That doesn't make them any less routine. And just one final thought on this. I find it disingenuous when Mr. Smith comes up here and criticizes us about this because Mr. Smith served on this city council for 2 years. And during his 2 years, he voted on about $50 million in consent agenda items on the consent agenda. He didn't pull those items off. It would have been his right to remove those items for further consideration, but he did not. So $50 million over 2 years is my recollection. It's been a few years since I've looked that number up, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 million in 2 years that he voted on. I don't recall hardly ever Mr. Smith asking for an item to be removed. So I just want the public to know that it's very common for cities to put things on the consent agenda. Anybody in the public has a right to speak on any item on the consent agenda, and if you ask a city council member to pull it, we almost always will pull it off the consent agenda for further consideration. So with that being said, I don't think there's anything improper. I know there's not anything improper about the consent agenda, and it's a way for us to have efficient meetings and allow for more people to be heard. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion? With no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.